Alive? Oh, no, Wayne, where are you? Okay, Wayne's away. Now, hello everyone. Happy Friday. Happy fucking Friday. I just want to make sure that you can hear us loud and clear. There's two people in the chat just now, so whoever you are, pop in a quick hello, give a ghost emo, whatever you want. So while you're doing that, guys, I just want to offer my condolences to Nigel Webster's family. If you don't know who Nigel Webster is, he is from Spectra, Paranormal and UFO Seekers. On his passing, I'm sorry to the family, I really am, on behalf of Frighteners. So tonight, guys, we are talking about everyone's favourite asylum in hospitals. Eric, you can't hear me, you arsehole, because you're commenting. But tonight we're talking about hospitals versus asylums, and why I put it that way is, he's back! Why I've put it that way is because there is a difference. There can be hauntings in normal hospitals, and then there can be hauntings in asylums. So I just decided to put the two of them together. Hey Scott, hey Robert, he's not very bright. So while I'm sharing out, right, how's everyone's week's been?
Busy, actually, for once.
Yeah.
Mount never out. Road trips all over.
Oh, sounds good.
Yeah, it's not been bad.
What about you, Mr. Seeding?
What about me?
How's your week been, cheeky?
Well, I've been living the lifestyle of the rich and famous and jetting all over the world and back. No, not really. Came back from Corfu on Monday.
So you didn't get stopped at Corfu then?
Oh, I wish I had. I just wish that when we had the big thunderstorms over there, which some people had seen the live feeds.
Hey Irene, hey Sarah.
I was hoping the thunderstorms were going to take out the runway, so we'd have to stay there for a week or so more. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. And it's always sad leaving Corfu because my mum and dad live over there. My sister and her fella and her boys live over there, so it's always sad to leave Corfu behind. But obviously needs must, and came back to good old Blighty Monday afternoon. Took advantage of the cheap travel from Stansted Airport back to Colchester for £2 a person, which was quite handy. And been in the thick of it since. I've been sort of reinventing our back garden. I've been chopping up decking and pressure hosing patio stones and all sorts, ready for my birthday barbecue tomorrow during the day.
Oh,
as it was my birthday on Tuesday, so we've decided that it's too far out. So Saturday we're having tomorrow we're having the birthday barbecue, which is an annual thing.
Now, why she's going to sing to you?
I know. I've already got me
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear fucking Wayne Seedon. Happy birthday to you. Mwah.
Well, you could have told me you were going to swear. I could have gone beep. Right.
No, I wanted you to screenshot it and put it up after and say I'll give you emotional damage.
Yeah, my cat's
emotional damage. No, that's my daughter saying that.
Happy birthday, Wayne, for Sarah. Wayne, you didn't go and see Irene. She's not happy.
Unfortunately, it's a bit of extra mileage from Corfu to Japan. As much as I would have loved to, Japan is on my bucket list.
Irene says we still have a nasty tropical storm here, and I'm going nuts in the house.
Well, as I suggested while you were on holiday, you could have got a windsurf. You could have used the storm to get across there and back.
Still a long journey from Corfu. Because obviously, bearing in mind, it's on the western side of Greece. So I've had to walk down south and all the way around the bottom of Greece and then out of the Mediterranean, the Adriatic, and get towards Japan that way. So it would have been quite a trek.
I can imagine. Oh, happy birthday, Lois. Please don't sing again. Fuck you. Ivy says, wearing a tutu for his birthday. Oh, what a sight to see. So, guys.
I'm in my Ouija board t-shirt tonight.
Ooh, I know. So tonight, guys, I'm going to kick it off because I've got a fan favourite of mine in Scotland, and that's was an asylum that only shut in the 2000 odds, and that's Lennox Castle. Lennox Castle was built in 1837. And in 1927, it was changed. The castle was later purchased by the Glasgow Corporation, and it was turned into for people with learning disabilities, as you can imagine. But then it was used as a mental hospital. Now, a lot has changed since it's closed. It had quite a shameful legacy, shall we say. Now, if you think about it, every mental hospital, it didn't matter whether it was Scotland, the States, or wherever, had a bad reputation. It's sprawled over many acres of the foothills, and when I talk about Lennox Castle, it would take any day and age to escape from, because where you've got to go is up a big massive hill. You've got to walk a wee bit further on, and the castle was just sitting there. It had 20 separate blocks, housing 60 men and women, each about, say, 1,200 people in total. And the castle itself was converted into nurses' homes. However, in the 80s, the standards had deteriorated in the castle to the extent that a study by the British Medical Journal found residents to be dangerously underweight and malnourished. It's even bad when the director, the hospital's medical director, said in 1986 he'd never worked in a worse pit. So when obviously Lennox Castle was shut, now you can imagine, right, how bad deflect it is. Now, I've been there myself. There's some aspects of the castle that you can't actually walk into and it's fine, and then there's other parts where it's just no inhabitable. When I've been up there, I tell everybody that if you go up just before night hits, when it's still daylight, you'll feel it's like a calm walk, dead calm, dead aura. But see, as soon as dark hits, and when dark hits this place, it's like a totally different atmosphere than for day. My experiences in that castle is that I've felt people walking round me. It's though when you're standing in the middle and you're trying to conduct an investigation, there's people walking round you. Personally, I've heard screams. I thought, right, as a paranormal investigator, I've tried logical, right, could it be an animal that made that sound? Could be. But then this was moving, and Scott is my witness because he was there, was that the scream started off, it was like yards away, but then it moved closer, and then it actually sounded the third time like it was only feet away from us. Now, as again, I have tried debunking this way, maybe it's animal sounds, maybe it's an animal, but then we shined the torch everywhere, even walked, and honestly, there was nothing there. So that was, for me, that was quite scary.
There is one animal that could do that, and you wouldn't notice a lot of time, and that's an owl. And they do screech while they're in flight. Some species, especially tony owls.
Scott even says himself, well, he says Lennox was a bitch of a walk, but that's only because it's got that big buck off hill. Hello, from France. We've got somebody investigating from France. Scott says the only local mental hospital to Glasgow I know of that don't have bad rep is Codwell. ID says Monument Castle should be left alone because of the history and it's important to keep. Scott says the atmosphere does change at night. We went there with someone walking round as the scream got closer. An animal screaming so much different and a voice and pitch is different. Did you shit your pants? I let out a scream and do you know what? On live, right? In this different setting, it's different, right? I'll F and Jeff, right? But see when I'm out doing an actual live, I like to be really level-headed and straight-headed and none of my nonsense. And that night, I went, what the fuck? You can actually hear it on the live. I'm saying, what the fuck? What the fuck was that? Because of how closer it was coming. And it wasn't just that. The atmosphere was already high because I could sense round about me. I could just feel people walking. No, that way where they're doing prison yards where they just walk right round in a circle. Well, kind of this is what it was like. Scott was like, I could back up what Lois is saying. This person says, look forward to meeting you. Be good. Eric says, Scott says, Eric had to change my pants. Dan says, hi.
Right.
It was quite intense. It was quite intense. So you guys had any experiences like that, whether it's hospitals or asylums?
Yeah, we've got, not personally, but my brother, there's an asylum stroke hospital that used to be near Halsham, which is about half an hour from here, called Headingley. And it was quite notorious for having some very, let's say, people that were slightly crazy in certain parts of the building. But there was a part of the place that burnt down, and I remember my brother and his friend were going over there to have a look round. And as they were driving past part of the building, they saw what they presumed was a security guard walking along.
Hey, Nicola.
So they decided, well, perhaps we better not go in. But as they came round the other side to turn the car around and drive back, they realised there was no floor in the building where the fire had been.
Oh, shit.
But I have seen photographs from in there, and I know someone who used to work there while it was quite busy, and they did have a lot of paranormal activity. It was knocked down, I think, in 2010. There's still one part of the hospital still there, but it's people are not so bad. But they built a house and estate on the rest of it. And a friend of mine has a daughter that lives there, and they all say they can see a woman in a white gown walking through their back gardens on occasions. So,
Oh, wow.
About you, Wayne?
Well, who wants to go next?
I'll go, seeing as I've just said, what about you, Wayne? But he's busy, so I'll take it. Yeah, place called Ridgely. It's in North Yorkshire, near Morecambe. It's on tops, overlooking Morecambe Bay. Been twice, and the first time, no entry, but there were an atmosphere all the way around it. The second time, walked straight in, and certain places were calm, and other places were very active. And these places I've noticed, because we've got one quite close to us called Storage Walls, these places, for me anyway, seem to be, it's the proper mentally ill, the ones that are just, they don't even know who they are half the time, or they think they're someone else. It seems to be these wards that are more active than any other, because I believe personally, as in life, as in death. So if you are possessed or mentally ill, you're still going to be in that state when you pass. So you've not got the respect or manners, for lack of a better explanation. You can easily be pushed, scratched, moved, possessed, because there's no compunction to be decent with these people. Unfortunately, it's not their fault, but it's just, for me, it seems to be the way things are. And I think that's why they've got the reputation that they have, because a lot of people would come out with stupidness like, oh, there's poltergeist activity. No, there isn't. It's just the way they are. But that's the way I'll see it. What about anybody else?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, isn't it? I mean, to say poltergeist activity in asylum, no, a lot of people in asylums would act out anyway. So you're basically just witnessing the ghost of someone in an asylum.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, as far as poltergeist goes, I don't think it's in the same category, to be honest.
But it doesn't help when you've got films, right? Like Grave Encounters. I'm going to take Grave Encounters as the main one, because a lot of people know what Grave Encounters is. So I'm going to use that as prime example. Now, I actually thought a TV show when I watched Grave Encounters, right? Mentioning no names, right? And Wayne's laughing because Wayne knows what I'm thinking. Right, so Grave Encounters kind of start. Well, it was that face. But it starts out that same kind of way where they have to take 100 shots before they get right. And that film just kind of, when people watch that, that's probably the impression that they kind of get in the asylums, because the ghosts coming out the walls, the hands coming down. Things like that, and being taken over, as Bry says. And it is, I think a lot of people watch too much films and TV and thinks exactly that's how the paranormal is. But when in hindsight, the actual reality is so much different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't find a lot of difference between ordinary hospitals and mental hospitals. Personally, I think they're both pretty similar.
I think if you're sensitive, they're pretty similar, aren't they?
Yeah.
I don't like walking through either of them, to be honest.
I'm not to be fair, but I mean, I've had to do it with groups, because a lot of my people that I work with, they want to do these things, and I'm thinking, well, why? Because if you see something or hear something, you're going to scream and run. I think that's the point. There'll only be me stood there, because that's what I've gone for, to interact.
What about you, Wayne? Because you said a really interesting one, which I really liked, and I've been desperate to hear it since you mentioned it, Davey.
We saved the best till last.
Save the best to last. That's what it is. Don't tell the boys though, because I don't want them handing in their notice, because you're saying that you're better.
Shortly after I left the Royal Air Force, I started working for a catering company at Severals Hospital in Colchester. Now, Severals Hospital was originally opened as a mental health hospital in 1913. Eventually, it turned into both mental health and care for the elderly, end-of-life services. So you had medical health wards there for the elderly, and you had the mental health wards complete with padded cells and the works. And it is very haunted, or it was very haunted until its closure and in 97. So it would be interesting to see whether the buildings although they'd been removed, and there's been a housing estate put on the site. It was a 300-acre site in total, and it was an echelon formation building, and it was all connected. All the wards were connected with massive long corridors, and you'd have 3 main corridors would go right the way down the middle, and then at the end they'd branch off into different sections. And the only way to describe it was like, if you look at the Orthodox Greeks Christian cross, where you have the one stem in the middle, and then the one at the top, then one in the middle, and then one underneath. It would literally had 3 staggered cross sections. And at the end of each section, you had a downstairs ward and an upstairs ward. The mental health was on one side, medical health was the other. And the amount of times when I would be working in the evening and you'd walk down the corridors and it was so thick, the atmosphere. All the patients were all indoors in their wards. They'd all been safely secured. But you knew something was watching you, and you weren't too sure what was coming around the corner. Eventually, I got promoted to the head chef of the staff restaurant down there. So I was starting work at 6 in the morning, finishing about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And it was my job to make sure that the staff restaurant had all its food ready and out on time. And then I had to do extra functions as well. So it was my job to prepare all the sandwiches and all the little pastries and stuff that they would have throughout this course. We had a massive function hall, and it was hired out for various things like sporting events. You wouldn't have thought it in a mental hospital, but there was hired out for sporting events and functions. And one of my members of staff had put all the food on these trolleys and was taking it down to this main hall. And she came back, and you could see she was all hot and flustered and panicky. And I'm like, what's the matter with you? Have you come across Barry? And Barry was quite a notorious patient. He would have his meds on a Thursday, and all through the weekend and the early start of the week, he was fine. You could talk to him, and he'd go on about going fishing with his brother and his dad. Although he killed them years ago with an axe. He was the original axe murderer of the UK. Killed his dad, his mum, and his brother with an axe. He was in Broadmoor for a while. He was then put into a secure unit at Severals Hospital, and then he was sort of like day release sort of thing. They'd let him out during the day. But usually by a Tuesday afternoon, you could tell that his meds were wearing off. And so he'd have to stay indoors because you could hear him shouting down the corridor. And she's like, no, it wasn't him. And I said, well, what's the matter? She said, I unlocked the door to go into the hall. I walked over to the table, started putting all the food onto the tables, and I could hear this knocking. And I went, right, okay, well, it was a big hall. It could have been anybody knocking on the windows or any of the doors. She said, no, it was coming from the stage area. She said, and I walked over to it thinking there was someone at the door because that was the door I'd came in through. She said, and I saw someone's foot, and it was swinging from the side of the stage, and it was banging against the window. She said, so I just hightailed it out. I went, don't be daft. I said, that's, there's nothing in there. There's nobody in there. You have the key to get in. And I was just thinking of it sort of more, so as I was being skeptic. I didn't believe what she'd said. So I said, well, the next trolley's ready, so we'll both take it down and see if you're right. So we both walked down there. We've walked in. We've set the tables up. The knocking started again. She went, go and have a look for yourself. I've walked over, and all I could see was the curtain moving. And I'm like, no, that's not right. We're the only 2 people in here, and this curtain's moving. So we've gone out, and a friend of mine that worked at the maintenance thing, the maintenance department, he said to me, he goes, are you all right in now? So we were coming out the doors, and he was like, and we were like, no, something by the side of the stage knocking against the windows and the side there. And he went, oh, don't worry about that. That's George. What do you mean that's George? He said, oh, he's always doing that. You just get used to it after a while. So we asked him who George was. Turned out to be a patient had hung himself from that side stage. He'd managed to get into the hall himself, hung himself from the roof of the stage, and it was his legs smacking into the side of the window and the door as he was swinging.
Wow.
Holy
We're,
shit.
we're like,
Wow.
okay. But the thing is the actual hospital itself was known for doing what they call it frontal lobotomy.
Aye. Lobotomy.
So they were doing a lot of experiments in that there. And in 1995, there was a study done for 2 years, right up until its closure, into the research onto whether the frontal lobotomy actually worked or not. And that was being conducted at that hospital. But there was also a lot of the older patients would say there's people walking through the ward that shouldn't be here. And I did a bit of research when we were there, and we found out there was tunnels underneath the hospital that led all the way to the general hospital, which is about 3/4 of a mile away from Severals. And while we were researching that, we found out that during the war, the Luftwaffe dropped 3 500-pound bombs on the west wing of Severals Hospital and killed 38 people.
Holy shit.
And they were all mental health patients. And so, of course, when we were talking to a few people, and some of the nurses had turned around to us and said that, you know, some of these patients have been saying they've seen people wearing World War II sort of dress. And I'm like, are these the odd 38 people that had actually died? And it turned out that was where the West Wing was.
Yeah.
The medical health units had been put in what was the original West Wing, and they'd rebuilt it after the war. And eventually they used it as the medical health. So it was a very strange place. The medical health people, they were kept locked in their wards. They weren't allowed out unless they were accompanied. Some of the mental health wards, they just opened the door and let them go. And it was very weird. The very first day I started working up there, me and another lad had to go down to the staff room to get some white jackets. And as we're walking down the corridor, this lady came walking up the other way. You couldn't tell her from any other person until we got closer, and she was mumbling to herself. And I went, keep your wits. I turned around to the lad by the side of me and went, keep your wits about you. You don't know what's going to happen here. And as we got closer, and I was the closest to her, and I could hear what she was saying, and she was mumbling to herself. She was going, "Oh, there's no need to be jealous of me." And I thought, what's she on about? I turned to the other lad and I went, she's a patient. I said, be careful. As we got level with us, she goes, "Oh, you give me that rubbish and I'll twat you." And all of a sudden, her arm went straight over the corridor towards us. I ducked, and she smacked my mate in the shoulder, made him go flying. And he went, "Sod that!" Boom, he was off down the corridor. I'm standing there going, I couldn't believe it. I thought, my mate had been assaulted by this patient. What do you do? But at that time, the main mode of thought was, if you were attacked by one of the patients, you got 5 seconds to get them off of you or get them away from you using whatever force necessary to get out of the way. And I'm just like, bollocks to that. And we just ran.
I don't blame you. Right, I'm going to read some of the comments because they're building up here. Scott says, felt like someone who had authority there, but not a good one. Robert says, we have a hospital in our area. You know it's bad when you see bars on the windows. Good evening to Andy. Robert says, my father was an engineer in the shipbuilding in Glasgow. He fell from a grinder, hit his head, was near the same again, spent the rest of his days in one of these places. I'm so sorry to hear that, Robert, as Eric says. Dan says, I used to do work in an asylum in North London. It was where they kept one of the Jack the Ripper suspects, but I never experienced anything odd. But I do remember the sadness, the perverted the place. Hope I'm saying that right and it's not coming out right. He was so upset.
pervaded, not perverted.
See, this is why anybody used to fucking read for me. Even though it was said to be haunted. In fact, I'd be surprised if it wasn't. And then it says, I had a great aunt that was shut away most of her life for gassing the kids with an old stove of that time era so she could go out. Holy fucking it. Eric says, I would think in a lot of asylums you'd get screaming at you. Robert says he turned out to be violent, very violent, no visitors. He was in one of those places for the next 35 years till he died. Lynn was saying how very sad stories. Hi, Lynn. She's just in for work. Right, Ian, you can read that one because I'll.
What a strap even.
Right, well, you done it well. Lynn says, wow. Lynn says, abortion is a very dangerous procedure. An aunt of mine had it in her 20s because she was depressed. It's to dumb people down. And it says, I've been reading some books on treatment sort of mental hospitals. Horrific. It was really, really horrific. Eric says, now they put children that people can't take care of in homes for them. Lynn says, a lot of psychos go off baseline when the meds are wearing down. Sarah Louise says she was sectioned a few years ago and she was scared stiff of the other patients. Now, somebody that's been sectioned herself is myself. I didn't really have any bad experiences and it wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting it to be really, really bad.
But everybody else was scared of, that's why.
Fuck you, asshole. I came out alright. Nobody touched me with a lobotomy. Mind you, they didn't get the fucking chance. I would take it off them.
I'd have to find your brain first.
Oh, that was a sore one. Linda, give him a punch. I'll wait now. I'll stop the show so you can do it. And it's laughing. Nicola says, just sounds like where I work now with behaviours. It can be really, really difficult. I mean, you think back all these years, they didn't have data voice things for people, so they were getting like lobotomies when they really shouldn't have been. Scott says, I let a patient out from a hospital I was delivering to. She was fully dressed and looked okay. I was going and I held the door open for her. Wasn't until my boss phoned me that I found out she was a patient. They found Ghetto. A lot of people in these places don't deserve to be there, but a lot's running. Exactly, Dan. I totally agree.
There was a big issue where, obviously, at one point, if you had a mental health issue, you were just treated the same as everybody else. It wasn't put into categories. Nowadays, when you look at people that are sectioned under the Mental Health Act, they look into it and they look at where the problem is and what level that person ends up getting treated at. So if you're just like I'm mildly depressed, then they'll just do the medication at home and they'll give you antidepressants, things like that. And then you get the next level up where you could get sectioned and you're in a low security environment. You know, you're looked after and you're treated with psychotherapy. You know, you sit there in front of a psychiatrist and they start going through everything to help bring you around a little bit more into a normal way of thinking. But if you get the ones that have this psychotic episode where they actually do harm to others or themselves, then that's when they start going into these locked off wards and then eventually obviously the padded cell rooms and things like that. And that was you know, obviously the be all and end all of it in the 70s and 80s. That was it. You were locked up in a mental health hospital. That was it.
Yeah.
There was no escape. There was no getting out. You were treated really badly. And in some cases, they were given the wrong medication because it was the medication they gave as standard. So something that could have nowadays been easily solved.
Yeah.
That would then put them in a downward spiral. And you see it so many times in documentaries and even in some of the films where they show you that these people, given the right treatment, would get better, but given the wrong medication, and it's a downhill spiral that just makes them worse and worse and worse until they've completely gone,
Yeah.
And there's no chance of them ever getting out. My uncle was one such person. He'd had a bad stroke, and they all thought it was Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. So he was given the treatment for Creutzfeldt-Jakob, or the human version of mad cow disease, and it was actually a stroke. But by the time the meds had kicked in, he wasn't capable of telling anybody that, what had happened to him to get in that frame of mind. And he lost the plot, and he ended up spending the rest of his days in a padded cell, because the second he woke up in the morning, he'd get out of bed and run full force straight into the first wall he came into. He'd turn around, run back the other way until he stopped into another wall. Yeah. Then he literally stayed there until in the end he passed away. And so depending on what level of treatment, what level of sort of, I don't know how to put it, mind break you have, would depend on what level of treatment you got. And like one of the comments earlier on, the mental health hospitals, they are I personally think are completely different to standard medical health hospitals.
Yeah.
Obviously, medical health hospitals, you walk into them, you're supposed to be there to get better. So there should be a positive vibe about the place. Like you say, though, Ian, sometimes you don't get that feeling with some hospitals.
Nah.
But I used to walk into Several's Hospital, and the second I got out my car, it felt all doom and gloom.
Yeah.
It was almost, going into that place was like, I'm one of the lucky people that get to go home every day. All these people that are in here, they're never going home. They're stuck here. And it just felt so gloomy. The walls, they were painted one standard colour, and that was it. The floors, one standard colour, that was it. And they were horrible colours as well. They, you'd have thought, have scenery put on the walls.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Something that if they're walking about the corridors, they can see and go, well, that's bright and chirpy, isn't it? Oh, I like the look of that. And help brighten them up a little bit more, rather than using the medication and getting completely stoned out of brains. All it did was delay their issue rather than try and cure it.
Yeah, I've had an experience with medication. I was suffering from depression and anxiety, and they took me off diazepam, which were working, but it's addictive. So they took me off that. They meant to put me on Prozac, but the receptionist in chemist couldn't read what it were. So they gave me Seroxat instead, which works on.
They gave you what?
Seroxat. Exactly. And I was literally.
I was responsible for helping promote Seroxat.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Because it was wrong for me, which it's not for everybody, obviously. Different kinds of wrong. So, and I wasn't a psychotic or anything like that. It was just depression and anxiety. So they gave me the wrong one. And I literally needed to bang my head against the wall for 6 hours until it worked out my system.
That's
Luckily,
horrible,
Dan. Otherwise, I'd have probably been even worse.
I'm going to go back to Scott's, right, because I think Scott's highlighted something, right. Scott says we were going to do a live about the history of mental health, but scrapped it out in respect for sufferers, and it could be a minefield. We felt I've actually done. Us as Frighteners, we have addressed mental health. We done a mental health awareness show. It is a hard one, right? But at the same time, it can kind of bring people together as well, because there was a lot that came out that night. That I noticed that a lot of people were like, I suffered, like me and Sarah. I'm going to say, sorry Sarah, use you as prime example, but me and Sarah suffer from bipolar, so it was easy for her to talk about her experiences, and it was easy for me to back at her. So I would heavily suggest doing a mental health awareness sort of thing, Scott. I wouldn't, the history of mental health. A lot of people are interested in this. They're interested. You've got to look at exactly as well.
Bryce said it as well. He suffered from anxiety and depression, so Bry's able to
I'm
tell
always
people
blue.
firsthand what he went through.
Hi,
I've been
Jacqueline.
able to experience it from the outsider's perspective, where Ellen has suffered from anxiety and depression. So I can sort of talk from the support side of things on how I supported Ellen through her depression and anxiety. So, you know, it's people's different experiences and different in different levels of mental health that actually help bring it forward and help other people.
I totally agree with Dad's comment.
There's a whole gambit of illnesses that border on mental health, like Louis said with bipolar. That's linked to ADHD, it's linked to autism, but it's also linked to depression.
Yep.
So the up and down mood swings are unreal. If people don't know and don't understand that, they judge people. Far too easily. So
in fact,
it's important.
What I would say to Scott is, if Scott is still in the chat, if you feel uncomfortable about it, then why don't you, as PIH, and me as Frighteners, like I'm sure the boys would be interested in doing it, and your team, why don't we do a collab and just do one big mental health night again?
And phobias. I'd like to do one on phobias, because phobias are definitely interesting. They're a category all on their own, but they can include mental health. Like me, I had a phobia which is classed as agoraphobia. For 19 years, I was agoraphobic. The problem is, I love the outdoors. I'm a landscape gardener. I couldn't work inside. So for me to suffer with that and not be able to go out were a nightmare. The way that it affected me personally was I was more insecure than agoraphobic, but the link to with that illness. It's a fascinating subject, is phobias.
Jacqueline says, with respect to Lois, and great big thanks, she's helped me loads. Anytime, Jacqueline, you know that. Scott says, hi Jacqueline, where's my badges? I wouldn't give him fucking badges. I would give him onion badges. I'm trying to help someone now had a call. Jacqueline, I hope it's not what I think it is. I really hope things are alright, and alright with yourself, definitely. It's like we're going back into like the whole PC thing. This whole PC thing just drives me off my tatty banger, so it does. The whole you can't say this, you can't say that bullshit, right? I don't believe in it anymore. I'm at 34. Like, see, when I was younger, I used to worry about things. See, now at 34, I don't know if it's just age or if it's just I just don't care anymore. So it's at the extent of where I'm no PC. Why should I be? So doing like these sort of things and bringing out awarenesses and things like that, I'm more than happy to go in it.
It's almost as if we've jumped back 60 years.
Yeah.
You know, there are subjects that are taboo. Yeah. Just like there were in the 60s and 70s, certain subjects were taboo. You did not talk about them. And now we've done the same thing yet again. History has repeated itself, only this time it's different subjects.
Yeah.
Or they're same subjects but under a different umbrella, if you get what I mean. You know, it's like you can't talk about this, you can't talk about that. But the problem is, a situation like that will never get resolved if you don't talk about it. If you don't have people that are experiencing that problem and are able to come forward and talk about that problem, then no one's going to understand. And for donkey's years, it was exactly that with autism. All the male members of my family suffer from autism. I've just done
welcome to the show.
I've just done a level 2 degree in understanding autism.
I would love that.
And I had to do it because I wanted to understand both my sons better and understand what I went through as a child having autism. It's, you know, and other people outside the autistic spectrum don't understand. They always look at unruly children and go, oh, their parents need to ease off the sugar. They need to burn off more energy. It's not as easy as that.
Exactly, Dan.
And so I think, you know, there needs to be more and more put out there so that people don't jump the gun. But at the moment, they're too scared to say anything because it's a taboo subject.
Dan says, and to see how... sorry, when you go, my love.
No, go on. You don't know.
Dan says, anyone see how that young girl was treated by the police in Yorkshire? She was suffering with autism and it was shocking what they did. Is that the girl that involved with the guy? The guy was stalking her, but she got done for it. If you know what I'm talking about, there was a guy that was stalking her. He was being pervy towards her. Sort of lassie, but the lassie got done for it.
I don't know, but it's not the first time.
I've not heard anything about that.
No.
I must admit, though, there are people that use mental health to their advantage. There's a girl on, I say a girl, El Faber on TikTok, uses their mental health issues to further herself and make money out of what she does. But unfortunately for her, it's come back, it's bounced back and bit her on the bum because what she was promising, she hasn't done. And people have given her thousands of pounds to go for the transition from male to female. And all she's done is go out and buy Gucci bags with it and go to lavish restaurants. So then you've got the other side of mental health where she's using a situation to benefit herself.
Yeah.
In the wrong way.
Look at what Scott said a few weeks ago. Mental health was brought into the paranormal. A certain person was putting mental health down. I know who he's talking about, and I know the very person that tweeted that on and was complaining. But then we'll not go down any of the road further. But the person that Scott's referring to, there was, what was it? I think somebody had posted, what would you change about the paranormal, or what would you like to see in the paranormal? And this person, who's supposed to be highly respected and one of the big ones on the TV, turned around and said...
One of our mutual friends, wasn't it? Lois?
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't say mutual friends. I would love to drop kick them. I better not say that, because I certain someone else will take that as I'm threatening them. So the person in question that I was just talking about, right, tweeted saying, what was it? Something to do with unhinged, all the mental unhinged. Get rid of the attention seekers. Was it something to that effect anyway?
Yeah.
And then the person that retweeted it, well, say no more, say no more. Say one thing, do the other. But it doesn't help when my point in case is it doesn't help when people read that if they're suffering from mental health. The problem that we've got in this world now and what we're up against is they want to change everything. Now, it's not just affecting, mental health. We're going through generations where you've got, I'm going to use this as a prime example, right? They want to change things like Roald Dahl's books. They want to change all that. They want to change the, Black Sheep.
Oh, you're talking about BT Brigade. Yeah, it's beyond a joke. Just let things be. For me, history is history. And it wouldn't be history if you changed it, would it?
Exactly.
I think one of the latest ones was they wanted Napoleon was a black man, weren't he?
I didn't see that one.
Disney casting a coloured lady as Rapunzel.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, I know.
That happened to
Hispanic, isn't she?
All right. Oh, sorry. I'm wrong.
He's playing Rapunzel.
Dan said no, Han. She was brought home by 6 coppers from being in town drunk, and she happened to mention that the female officer looked like her lesbian nana. So they more or less dragged her from her home, screaming and punching herself mid-breakdown, and they arrested her for no reason. That is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
Well, see, funny enough, right, Dan, if you didn't see last night's show, next Thursday, right, it's going to be very, very controversy, right? I think there's going to be a few heads rolling, but I'm doing it on cops and cops who kill. Now, I don't really want to. There's sometimes I don't really want to broach subjects, but it's a big thing now about trusting cops, so that does not surprise me, Dan. Lynn said, I worked with autism for years, very interesting. Nobody used to want to handle the subject. Someone I know close to me who was never right but not naughty as a child. When the parent asked for help when he was a child, the mother was told to go to church and pray to God and asked him to help the child. Oh my God. 42 years later, that child got assessed and he's autistic. Scott, I went to town on a show about it. I know, I heard. They've changed the Bean comics as well now. I didn't even know that. Robert says it's all these woke people and PC people. Sarah says, I'm trans and I hate how a lot of companies and organisations are using trans people for their own gains, and it's left trans people like living in fear. Sarah Louise, I put my heart out to you, I really do. Dan says, I'm afraid, wait, no, that's sort of been away from me. I'm afraid the police have become a law upon themselves. They've been, right, come on in, help me out, brother.
Politicised.
Thank you. See, this is why I love using him. Eric says, oh my God, why don't they just go back to burning books? Sometimes you need to ask what the fuck. I'll say it, don't worry, Eric. What some people don't realise is mental health comes in so many different forms. It's not people locked up in padded cells or whatever. It affects millions around the world from many different walks of life. Definitely, without a doubt. These comments are all over the place tonight. I'm watching that. It's unbelievable what they have let the police force. I was a minor, and in the 80s it became police state, and then Yeah, so Thursday I'm doing a show on that because I think there's a lot to talk about. The police, as and it says, as well, somebody said, was a law upon themselves. So I thought, you know what, fuck it, let's go with that show. So next Thursday's going to be funny. Dan says, let's be honest, we are on the spectrum somewhere. Definitely, Dan, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, they reckon that everybody is on the autistic spectrum. It's just that autism itself is one huge umbrella with so many different segments in it. And autism itself wasn't actually given a name until 1984. So anybody born before 1984 up to the age of 3. So if you were lucky to be born in 81, it wouldn't have been noticed until you were 2 to 3 years old. That's when they start spotting it in nurseries. Then it's a 5-year process from spotting it to being given a diagnosis. Then you've got the hassles of getting education and healthcare plans, which is what used to be the statement, which lovely called it the statement. And then obviously going through the benefit side of things for disability living allowance, carers allowance, and so on. And it all depends on what level of autism they've got. And if you go up as high as the likes of ADHD, Asperger's, which they don't like to label them anymore. They're now just classed as ASD. Nothing else. You don't have Asperger's syndrome. You don't have high functioning autism. You've just got ASD. But then the problem is the people like disability living allowance, the Department of Work and Pensions, they want to know exactly.
Oh, hello, Tamsin.
They want to know exactly what autism they've got, so they can actually work out what level of disability living allowance they get.
Yeah.
But, well, you can't just stand there and go ASD. You've got to be specific, because otherwise they're not going to get the right care and the right benefit that
Which
they
I
need.
believe is on purpose.
And,
Do you
it's a minefield.
see when I was at training once? Right, only go my love.
And at 6-year-old, I was classed as highly strung and bilious, and they stuck me on phenobarbital for 4 years. I was never diagnosed with nothing, like you said. And then all of a sudden, when I started suffering with agoraphobia, oh, they've got a name for everything.
Yeah.
And I thought, what's going off?
Yeah, I mean, they claim that anybody with autism, especially one of the higher level autisms, you can end up with other medical issues as well. So the agoraphobia could be brought on via the autism.
Yeah.
My son Ethan has developed rheumatoid arthritis because of his high functioning autism.
Yeah.
Little Freddie, my youngest, we think he may be diabetic now, and he's only 3. And that's come on because we reckon we're going through the process of having him diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Yep.
So a lot of the higher echelons of autism tend to have a double barrel. You get the autism and you get something else to go with it.
Sarah Louise says mental health now classed as a disability, and if you have mental health diagnosis, you can get disability bound. It's in a blue badge. Dan says my mate's child. Sorry, sweetie.
In an adult, autism is harder to diagnose because in adulthood you learn to work around it. Your brain's wired differently, that's all it is, and you've figured out ways of working away around the issues that may come up in everyday life. So it becomes harder to diagnose it, and it's a lot harder in women to diagnose than it is in men.
Do you know, that's very, very true what you're saying, Wayne, because for years I've managed to hide my personality disorder, and it's due, I suppose, right, it's like, I'm going to use you as prime example, but I know if that makes sense, right? But you write stories, you create characters. Well, that's basically what I've done with my personality split. I've created characters, but I don't actually know who I am, if that makes sense. Because I've had it that well for years. It's like people would say to me, but you wouldn't think that you have a personality split, Louise, and I'm like, you don't fucking live with me. Scott says, where's my... Listen, I treat you as boys well down in that, don't I, Wayne? And you're the you guest in the basement.
And what room you keep him in then? Because we've never seen him.
Yeah, he's top floor. Him and Mark's get the top floor, half a room each.
That's not the basement then, is it?
My nephew's awesome. Osha, what character my science hasn't got. Eric got powers. 2 minutes, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Right,
hello.
Tamsin. Hello, gorgeous.
She's off to bed now.
Night night. Bye bye, babe. Oh, bless her. Do you know what I love?
Stories before she goes to bed, Wayne.
Sorry?
Don't you tell her one of your stories before she goes to bed?
She normally gets a little normally like a 5-minute bedtime story. It's one of these. We give her these kids hut, I think it's called, and their stories with morals on. So it sort of centres around not stealing things off of other people, and they build the story up around that. So it tries to actually get her to understand that doing wrong things is actually bad, but it just makes it worse.
Jacqueline says that's cute. That's good. Do you know what I'm sitting here thinking about what Eric said? There was one of the comments that Eric made that's gave me a wee idea in my head, but I'll tell you was going back. Is that the lovely Ellen? Oh no, it's Chloe. Hi, Chloe.
Hello.
Hiya, sweetness. Are you behaving?
only been home an hour.
Honestly. But yeah, guys, definitely tune in. Next Friday we have Billy Baker. Really?
Brian
Baker.
Brian Baker.
You're inventing
Fuck me.
people now. Look, it's not one of your personalities, it's a guess.
Right, I fucked up. I'll start that again. Next week we've got Brian Baker. So Bry's in the hot seat. So instead of me being here, I'm going to be here and Bry's going to be there. So check out, and please, guys, see if you're a podcaster wanting to join a network, please get in touch with Simply Spooky Network. With myself or Vivian, we are looking for people to do shows. It doesn't need to be paranormal based. It doesn't need to be. It could be anything. It could be absolutely anything. Anything you've got a passion about, please get in contact with us and find out more information. On Monday, the wonky donkey. I feel like a wonky donkey if they're calling the wrong guest.
Bedtime stories, Wayne Seaton, only on Simply Spooky.
Lindsay's, Lou, do you think you change your cards for each situation that you end up with? Do you know what, Lynn? That's precisely what I do. It's like a comfort zone thing. And a lot of people might think I'm being hard-hearted, but I'm not really. I've actually got a soft heart more than what people think. I'm quite a wee sensitive soul. They'll all tell you, no, I'm not. Like Pinocchio, like, pew, pew. But I'm quite sensitive. On Monday, you have got On Monday, you've got the two good-looking fellas from the That Mirror show. So, boys, what are you talking about on Monday?
I don't know. Aliens, right? On Monday, tune in. I think at the moment the popular story that's going about at the moment is the village that's being attacked in Peru. There is supposedly a village in Peru that is having regular visits by entities about 8 foot tall and are actually attacking the village. And there's photos taken, and it's a bit alarming.
Exactly, self-protection.
Well, no, it's true, Wayne. If they start showing the popular film Asylums.
You're welcome, honey. You're welcome. But definitely, guys, check out Monday with Wayne and Mark. On Tuesday, what are we talking about? Egos. We're talking about egos and the paranormal, and I cannot fucking wait for that one on Tuesday. I am going to let go. I'm going to be like, but yeah, guys, you all have a good weekend. Please look after each other, and please remember that you don't know what somebody's fighting. So please take care, guys. All right, and I'll see you all soon.